Hello there guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again. Rational perspective on Chelsea 1, Zenit 0. Chelsea get their Champions League defence off with a win. Not the best performance, one individual moment of ruthlessness from Romelu Lukaku that really summarises the game. Yeah, it wasn't a fun watch. I was obviously working a game for Football London, and I have to write like a post-match piece, and I have to say for about 68 minutes, I didn't know what I was going to be writing about. It was going to be sort of summarised as a really frustrating evening, especially harking back to like previous failures where Chelsea really struggled to break down a low block. But with Lukaku up top, you already see the difference it's going to have for Chelsea. I feel like the last two games now, Chelsea need to improve their overall performance. Absolutely, we can't sustain the last two performances in terms of results, despite Chelsea having a lot more possession, obviously, and looking like the side trying to make something happen. In terms of overall performance, Chelsea needs to be better. More players need to perform. The last two games against Aston Villa and Zenit have showed two templates of games that Chelsea have faltered in recent years. You've got the more chaotic. The game on Saturday against Aston Villa, where Chelsea are being done on transition. We have a brilliant keeper in Edouard Mendy who bails us out, but also Lukaku up top who scores goals that fundamentally change the look of that game and put Chelsea in a good position. And then you've got this type of game against Zenit last night where Chelsea are faced with a very organised Zenit defence, a low block, that dreaded low block that Chelsea have struggled to break down in recent years without having that amazing finisher up top who can just take a half chance but also the best chance of the game and put it away and win the game for Chelsea. You've seen Lukaku, the difference he's made in the last two games, but especially the first four games he's been back. 4 goals in 6 attempts on target so far this season. I spoke in the last video, the review of Aston Villa, about the lack of touches he had against Aston Villa, but still managed to score 2 goals. If this is the form of Lukaku, I think we're going to run out of ways to praise him because he is the elite forward. He's in that bracket with Lewandowski and Ronaldo in terms of the elite forward, the guy who is going to just make Chelsea's attack much more mature. That's the way I'd describe it. Chelsea's attack needed that senior figure, needed that figure who's going to take the standards to increase it, to stop all of those wasted chances and poor finishing that have really frustrated us since Costa has left and Lukaku stepped in. You can tell that Rom just loves that responsibility. You can tell he wants to be the leader of this team, because there still are young players, despite we've had some, brilliant performances from Mason Mount over the past year, our player of the year last year. It's going to take a lot of the pressure off, I think, the rest of the players. And I also think it's going to give players that focal point that they can hit and try different things. I think it is benefiting someone like Mateo Kovacic, who I'll get to, I think had another good performance last night. It just gives them that focal point and that leader figure, that player that can make the difference in these big moments and can really take the burden of the responsibility of doing big things for Chelsea when things aren't really clicking. Because they weren't clicking last night. It was a very frustrating evening. And I think it was a pattern of a game that we'd seen before, and Chelsea haven't come out with the right result. But now we've got Lukaku up top. That is going to change things drastically. But the starting 11, I wasn't overly surprised. I think the biggest talking point for me was no Ben Chilwell once again. Of course, he came on later in the game. The big question is what's going on with Ben. I mean, the fact that he came off the bench maybe settles some of that conversation down. It's not like he's in Tuchel's bad books because he did come off the bench. He is in the squad. But I just wonder, when is he going to start in the Premier League? Is it going to be against Spurs on Sunday, which is a big game? After that in the Premier League, we've got Man City the following Saturday, which is a massive, massive game in the Premier League. But I think that those questions have to be answered. I don't think Alonso was particularly brilliant last night, and I think you're seeing him starting to flag a little bit. I do think that Alonso, for as brilliant as he's been, and it's not the case I've got any sort of hate or dislike of Alonso. I just think it's the overall consistency of a player. I think Alonso, at his age especially, is good in bursts. I think you'll see over the course of the season, there'll be moments when Tuchel will bring him back in and he'll really, steal the show, as he continually does during his Chelsea career. That's the chaotic nature of Marcos Alonso. He's good in moments, but I think consistently Ben Chilwell will be the first choice, and I think it's about getting him back into the first team. I have to say, though, 2 players that disappointed me on the night was Mason Mount and Hakim Ziyech. I mean, Mason, this was his poorest performance in some time. I mean, Maybe Aston Villa at the back end of last season, I thought he was a bit underwhelming in that game. But in terms of the lack of precision in his passing, that was the most staggering thing, given how influential Mason has become for Chelsea, the way he builds up attacks. I feel like his tenacity, work rate, pressing, and, winning the ball back, that was all there, the fundamentals. It reminded me a little bit more of Mason from 2019-20, especially that middle period of the season when we were struggling a little bit under Frank. And I think he personally was struggling to find that rhythm. So he definitely did look like a younger version of himself, rather than the more consistent and influential figure that we have seen over the past year. But I think once again, you're seeing that, even if Mason is under par, we've got Lukaku who can step up. And, that's the big thing about Rom. He's going to take, I think, pressure off of other players. If other things aren't clicking, if the flow isn't really there, the rhythm, in Tuchel's game isn't really there, you've got Rom who's going to make the difference. But I felt Mason in particular was pretty poor. And I've got to give him criticism because I just don't think his game was really there. Especially, I think he could have been a lot better in his passing, consistently giving the ball away. And I think it's a similar tale for Hakim Ziyech. This was a big opportunity for Ziyech. Second consecutive start. And I feel he just didn't influence the game at all. He lost the ball. I think he slowed down Chelsea's tempo, especially in attacks when we needed to have that rhythm. And especially when you're playing against such a good, well-organised team, your movement has to be better. I think that Ziyech, the player we saw in pre-season, I don't know if the injuries knocked him back, but this was a chance for Ziyech to really imprint his mark, and say to Tuchel, I have to be in this front three. That still is sort of gelling, but I don't think he took his opportunity, and I don't think he can have any complaints if he isn't starting against Spurs on Sunday. I think it's more likely Kai Havertz is going to take his place once again. I just felt also the width in that first half. The wing backs are so key to Chelsea, and I thought both Reece and Marcos Alonso really struggled to get up the pitch and really struggled to offer sort of that variety, especially getting in behind Zenit, their back five. Eventually in the second half, we increased our tempo, which I think was helped by both Jorginho and Mateo Kovacic improving their passing, and especially the back three, especially Christensen, Dave and Rudiger really starting to make some key passes, and especially try and increase the tempo from there, trying to make runs from deep. And obviously Antonio Rudiger, who was just outstanding on the night. He saves Chelsea a goal in the second half. He really does, and that was a key moment. And Rudiger, of course, he has those moments of madness where he charges up the pitch, tries to be Messi and score the winner for Chelsea, but as a defender, he is in the form of his career, and I think Christensen is exactly the same. Both of those guys, if Chelsea can secure them with new contracts, I think it'd be brilliant for Chelsea, because Rudiger is just in the form of his life, and I think he deserves credit along with Christensen. Tackle success for Rudy, 100%. Aerial duel success last night, 100%. And there were times when Zenit broke and Chelsea needed to be alert, and I think Rudiger was always there to sweep up, which was brilliant. I think obviously Cesar Azpilicueta creating the goal for Rom. It reminded me that ball has always been in Dave's game, but it reminded me a lot of the connection he had quite briefly with Alvaro Morata. When Morata arrived, of course, we're going to have the Morata derby in a few weeks' time against Juventus. He scored for Juve last night. But it reminded me of that connection. And, Dave, I think, he continues to surprise us, and I don't know why he surprised us, because of his longevity. Maybe I do think it's one of these cases where you're constantly focused on the new thing, the new signing, the new young player, but the longevity and consistency of Dave and the levels he maintains as a defender still needs to be appreciated. We're all excited about the future of Chelsea, but Azpilicueta is such a brilliant leader. He's an outstanding presence back there. His defensive quality, especially on the right side of a back three, is just maximised. He is the player that you want in that defence, and he's just continually proving himself that he is going to be a regular for Tuchel. And even with the emergence of Trevor Chalobah, even with links to Jules Koundé, you got to appreciate Dave, because he's not only defensively immaculate still at his age, it's also him creating goals, which is brilliant for Chelsea that won us the game. I do want to mention Mateo Kovacic. I don't know if it's the spirit of that number 8 shirt really influencing him. I don't know if it's Soundagares coming in now and giving him some more competition. But pretty much since the start of the season, I think he's performed really, really well. In particular, his influence in the final third, which has always been a key frustration of fans. Him assists can be, as I tweeted the other day, assists can be kind of a stat that can be warped a little bit in terms of what an assist is. Mateo Kovacic's 2 assists this season are very different. You know, the assist he made for Trevor Chalobah was a simple crossfield ball that then Chalobah takes and strikes the ball in from 25 yards. You know, that pass doesn't create the goal. It's a lot different to the pass he sets up for Romelu Lukaku, for instance. That is a wonderful Cesc Fabregas type assist. You know, that pass creates the goal. That movement from Kova in central midfield is what changes the game and pretty much lights up the situation for Chelsea when we were struggling a little bit against Aston Villa. I felt last night there was a few moments, in particular a ball into Hakim Ziyech, that Ziyech should have taken a shot from, you know, that could have been another assist for Kova. You know, those are those moments where Kovacic shows the quality he has to get out of tight areas, and he has all the capability to find himself in the right place at the right time. But if he can do this more consistently, the praise is going to be there, and I think it needs to be. Nazar Kinsella, Mateo Kovacic only misplaced 3 of his 104 passes tonight, 97% pass completion, 96.4 completion in the final third, and I felt there were a few times where he was trying to add that energy. There are a few times when across the team in that first half, more so in the first half than the second, few too many touches. You know, it's one of those things where it's just, do we need to take as many touches? Can a player from the back three move forward? And I think that's what Tuchel was trying to get into them at half time. You definitely saw Rudy making advances up the pitch, and Mateo Kovacic, I think, was a lot more precise in his passing in the second half, trying to get into the final third, trying to make things happen. Lukaku's making a difference. We need improved performances from certain players like Mason Mount and Hakim Ziyech in the future, but it's a win, and it shows you why Lukaku was the record-breaking signing, why he is the dream transfer for Chelsea, and a win is a win. So we move on to Spurs on Sunday. Let me know your opinions on the game in the comments below. I'm guessing your man of the match will likely be Romelu Lukaku, but I think there are other players who deserve praise as well. So thank you guys for watching. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.